Hello and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to unpack a fascinating, highly volatile geopolitical scenario. Think of it as a political thriller. We've got backroom betrayals, surprise military strikes, and a dramatic falling out between two of the world's closest allies, the United States and Israel. We are looking at a projected timeline for the year 2026. It's a year where decades of established foreign policy just take a complete U-turn. So let's dive right in and see exactly how this complex web unfolds, shall we? Now, to truly understand this situation, I want you to imagine a bizarre, rather toxic friendship. Actually, picture a corporate office. The intern is aggressively giving orders to the CEO, but the CEO is the one actually funding the intern's salary. That is the exact, kind of funny, yet incredibly serious analogy our source uses for the US and its ally in this 2026 scenario. The nation providing the weapons, the funding, and the global protection suddenly finds its directives completely ignored. So how on earth does a superpower handle an open rebellion from its most dependent partner? Section 1. The Surprise Birthday Deal. June 14th, 2026. The inciting incident of our story happens on this exact date. And ironically, it is U.S. President Donald Trump's 80th birthday. But the gift isn't for him. Instead, the president announces a massive peace deal with Iran, and Israel is completely excluded. I mean, they weren't even shown the agreement before the announcement. And the sheer scale of this is absolutely shocking. This deal ends decades-old sanctions and establishes a staggering $300 billion rebuilding fund for Iran. Fully 50% of this enormous sum is already committed. The U.S. basically pivots its foreign policy overnight. But you have to ask, why take such a drastic step? Section 2. The Epic Blunder. How did we get here? Let's just take a step back for a moment. How does a best friendship break down so completely? Well, early in 2026, the U.S. and Iran were actually in active, promising negotiations in Europe. A diplomatic solution was very, very close. However, the Israeli Prime Minister intervenes. He allegedly convinces the U.S. president to just abandon these peace talks and launch an unprovoked surprise attack on Iran instead. The promise to the White House was incredibly simple. It's going to be quick, Iran will surrender immediately, and regime change will happen in a matter of days. And that leads us directly to Operation Epic Fury. This is the February 2026 U.S. military operation that, according to the source, completely backfired. Instead of surrendering on day one as promised, Iran fought back fiercely. They launched massive, unexpected retaliations across the Middle East, specifically targeting other U.S. allies like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. The White House was absolutely shocked. The so-called easy victory turned into an absolute regional nightmare. Let's trace this rapid timeline, because the pacing here is literally like a frantic thriller. In February, the operation launches. By mid-February, Iran is heavily retaliating, exposing the false promises made to the U.S. By April, reality sets in, and a desperate ceasefire is announced. And then, just 2 short months later, in June, we get the massive birthday peace deal. You can see the speed at which the U.S. president's perspective shifted from aggression to peacemaking, and it was entirely driven by the absolute failure of that initial attack. Section 3. A Toxic Friendship Unravels. Fighting over the steering wheel. As the U.S. tries to pivot towards peace, we enter a phase of, fighting over the steering wheel. The ally absolutely refuses to put down their weapons. The source outlines the exact breaking points that shattered this alliance. First, continued military strikes in Lebanon directly interfered with active peace talks. But the ultimate insult? An attack on Beirut just 2 hours before the U.S. and Iran were scheduled to sign their agreement. 2 hours! This deliberately delayed the signing, and the whole thing was followed by open public clashes at the global G7 summit. The disrespect was now completely out in the open. Which brings us to a moment of unprecedented public rebuke. The U.S. president finally pushed past his limit, states it very, very plainly. There is no Israel without America. It is a stark, unfiltered reminder of dependency. The funder is finally reminding the intern who actually pays the bills and provides the security blanket. But observe just how bizarre the political rhetoric becomes in response. On one side, the president states a clear geopolitical reality of dependency. No Israel without America. But then, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, openly contradicts his own president, stating, there is no America without Israel. It really highlights the sheer absurdity of the situation. You have an American ambassador essentially prioritizing a foreign ally over his own commander-in-chief. So why the sudden warmth toward Iran? Well, the source provides a fascinating psychological analysis here.
You see, the U.S. president is described as a leader who respects power and strength above all else. When Iran didn't fold during epic fury, but actually fought back fiercely, it triggered a massive psychological shift. He began to view his former adversary with a newfound pragmatic respect. They proved to be strong, while his closest ally proved to be a liability who fed him bad intelligence.
Section 4. The enemy within the house. A divided cabinet. Now here's the major plot twist of our story. The president decides to pivot his foreign policy, right? But his greatest enemies are sitting right inside his own house. Let's map out this internal rebellion so it's crystal clear. The very people appointed to execute the president's vision, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, and CIA Chief John Ratcliffe are actively working against the peace deal. According to the reports, all of these top officials are fiercely pro-Israel. The administration's inner circle is fundamentally misaligned with the president himself. Going against such a powerful, entrenched political lobby comes with incredible risks. The source neutrally lists the severe alleged consequences the president faces for this rebellion. First, open defiance from his own cabinet. Second, whispers of potential political blackmail, specifically mentioning the threat of new leaks from the infamous Epstein files. And finally, alleged threats to the president's political survival and even his personal safety, drawing on historical precedents where presidents who oppose this lobby saw their careers abruptly end.
Section 5. A second independence? The ultimate risk.
This brings our narrative to its dramatic climax. The source frames this entire 2026 scenario as a potential second independence for United States foreign policy, which leaves us with a massive, lingering question. In this projected timeline, with his own cabinet against him and alleged threats hanging over his head, can a U.S. president actually survive going against America's closest ally? It is a volatile, fascinating scenario that really forces us to question the true nature of global alliances. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and I'll leave you to ponder that exact thought.